Welcome back to She's Got Game. On this week's episode, I'm joined by Helen Brown. Helen is responsible for some of the brightest British talent in rowing. She has gone out there and she has scouted talent from people who are not traditionally in rowing through the public school route, and she's helped them from their very first strokes all the way up to competing on the international stage. She has even helped some of that talent go on to compete at the Olympics. Helen is known for her straight-talking honesty combined with real, genuine care for her athletes. We talk about how to balance the two, why it's so important to have that honesty and trust with your athletes, and how to do it yourself if you are a coach. I absolutely love this episode, and I hope you do too. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Helen Brown, welcome to She's Got Game. Thank you so much for joining me today. Let's start at the beginning. How did rowing first come into your life and what drew you to it?
Gosh, well, thanks for having me.
So welcome.
In terms of where I came into rowing, I was actually quite a sporty person when I was younger. I did a lot of school sport, swimming, netball, etc., but was never really that talented. I did dance and loved that, but once again kind of reached the end of where I was going to get to with dance. My brother started rowing at school and he challenged me to do a real sport, which didn't go down well at the time, but I tried it, did my learn to row and fell in love with it. From there, because of the enjoyment I got through some volunteer coaches that really honed a bunch of us 13-year-old girls to create success, I stuck at the sport and really found my niche and my place, both as a coach, but then particularly as a rower to start with. So, yeah.
And we were just talking about, we just spoke about so much that I want to repeat for our listeners, but
sure.
We were talking about the level that you got to as yourself as an athlete in the sport. Can you talk us through that journey and how it looked for you?
Yeah, so I started at 13. My learn to row, I distinctly remember being the worst person, and I actually had to be rescued from a weir because I was so bad I was floating backwards. So that was not great, but soon picked it up. And at the age of 15 we were national champions, which was great, and I obviously loved it. And from there we went on and did some trials as a club, and we actually ended up getting selected to go against France, and I was in an 8, so there was 9 of us in the boat, one cox telling us what to do, and I was in the powerhouse, which for a short person wasn't natural, and we just lost to France, but it gave me the real bug. I did do some trials for Great Britain in the junior level, and got nowhere near the top, and at that point I think my coaching probably started to become my focus, although I did continue to row through university, which was probably more the fun end rather than necessarily the high competitive nature, as I started to then also coach alongside. So yeah.
And how did you first enter into the coaching side of what you now do, that transition from athlete to coach?
So I was part of a community club, and I mentioned we did learn to row courses, and part of that at the age of 14, 15, I would actually help out the volunteer coaches, teaching the new generation to row. And from there, I actually started coaching masters level adults, all the way through to some of the senior boats that were around. And then I went off to uni, and immediately at university, I went there actually to get away from rowing, and immediately ended up in the rowing club, and became captain, coached there, coached our novices how to learn to row, etc. And then as part of my degree, I ended up doing a year in industry, and that year in industry was it came about by a cold letter to the performance director of British Rowing, and I ended up working at a talent ID centre in both Twickenham and Reading, and that's really where my professional internship and my professional coaching came about, and I was really able to kind of learn my craft through that. Yeah.
Can you explain to our listeners who may not know what talent ID means?
Yes, sure. So this particular scheme was going out into the community and finding people that would have the natural attributes or physical attributes to be successful at the sport of rowing. So often it's levers and a bit of power, so we need a bit of muscle as well, and an aerobic capacity, so the lungs on them as well. So you go out, you go into the community, you find young people, and you get them tested. So that might be at schools, universities, or in community events. A lot of the athletes I ended up coaching were through that, and from there you teach them how to row. There's no guarantee they're going to be successful, but you at least know that they've got the physical attributes, and you hope to be able to inspire them to then be able to progress in the sport.
And do you feel like that has made a change into the traditional world of rowing, with that traditional path of going to public school and that you row from a young age? Do you feel like programs like the Talent ID program you're involved in has helped shift that nature of the sport?
Absolutely. So from a GB rowing perspective, this program used to be called the START program. It's now called Performance Development Academies. And these academies are placed all throughout the UK. And if you look at the setup of our national team now, there's a high percentage of the athletes that are representing and going and winning medals at Olympics and also at the World Championships that have come from these programs. So they are focused, okay, they're centralised and supported, but it does give that extra avenue that perhaps someone who had the talent but didn't realise that this was an option for them could go and succeed and be developed. So I think it's invaluable.
It's amazing. Yeah. I didn't realise that was such a big part of it until you were telling me about it earlier. I think it's so cool. You mentioned you went to uni to get away from rowing.
Yes.
Why was that?
I think I had decided that I wanted to be a coach, or certainly I wanted to be in people development. And I had rowed all throughout whilst I was at school, and I realised that I probably wanted to experience life beyond just the rowing boat. But I wanted to learn also how to be the best coach or people developer I could be. So I chose my degree in sports science, but I also chose a load of modules about people development and management. And I was trying to branch out and go into the academic route and help understand that side rather than just be put into the boat and focused on the rowing side. It didn't last too long. I ended up finding my community again, and actually I would think it worked out for the best because I could practice what I was learning on the university side in the rowing club itself, and I enjoyed my time there, absolutely.
Looking back, who or what would you say had the biggest influence on the coach that you've become today?
Gosh, in terms of influence, I'd probably say there's a series of people. When I first started my internship, actually, when I was 20 during university year, there was a particular athlete. She was 17 at the time, and I had given her certain points, and she had only just been being coached by me, and she made a comment to say that I needed to earn her respect.
Okay.
And that was quite a stark moment. I actually know her very well today. She works with me now, and it actually made me realise that as a coach, you can't just put the badge on or put the title on and say, okay, well, now you need to listen to me. She was right. I had to know the reasons why I was telling her what to do. She was an international athlete and she was standing up for herself. And that really influenced me to make sure that I did my research. I asked around, but I also listened to the athlete. I didn't just hide behind this title. So that was one key point that I'd say shaped me or influenced me to be the coach that I am now. On top of that, I'd say two athletes that I coached that both were elite athletes prior. So for a brief moment, a guy called Ben Pritchard and longer, a guy called Callum Dixon. Both of them came into my program having been elite athletes before. And they really taught me and the athletes around them how to be an elite athlete, how to operate, how to take things seriously and be focused. I knew I wanted to take things seriously, and I obviously was guiding people, but seeing that in practice and seeing them lead the others really helped our program as a whole and other athletes to perform at their best. And then probably lastly, I'd say the shaping of my coaching has also come in recent years from my line manager or boss in GB rowing, a brilliant coach called Pete Shepherd. He has seen so many development athletes over the years, and he has a holistic approach to coaching. He cares about their lives, he cares about the pressures around it, but he also has world-leading approaches to enable them to perform. And being able to work with him and see how he leans on other people and their specialties in terms of our support staff, and also how he respects the athlete but guides them, has been a massive part of my shaping in the recent years.
He sounds like a really cool guy.
He is, yeah.
Often that emotional intelligence side is what's missing from good coaches in order to allow them to become great. What would you say are some of the biggest adjustments you had to make when you stepped out of the world of being an athlete and more into the world of being a coach?
I'd say the adjustments were, yes, emotional intelligence is one. You have to read the athlete rather than just parrot off what you're trying to do today. What's the session? That probably came more naturally to me than I perhaps thought it might, probably because whilst I was growing up, that was a big part of conversation. My family is quite in tune with emotional intelligence, and that's natural, but I did have to make sure I was purposeful with that. So making sure that you obviously talk to an athlete, understand what's going on, but read their body language, not just the words that are coming out of their mouth. That's so important. That probably was more natural, like I say. Probably the things which caused me to think more is when you start coaching, you think about coaching as just delivering a session. The reality is that that's the tip of the iceberg. The time that I spend thinking about how I'm going to approach an athlete, thinking about conversations that might be difficult, how do I ensure that I get the best out of this person through a particular training block, is more the stuff that took time to adjust. Because when I first started coaching at 15, I was turning up, helping and leaving and not really thinking about the session after. Yeah. So recognising that the coaching was far more than just the physical, technical coaching that you do.
Was there ever a moment where you were like, this is what I'm meant to be doing and this is where I'm meant to be?
Yeah. Several moments, obviously along the way, but I obviously started coaching young. But when I really recognised that this is the career for me, was probably first starting point was when I had my first win against all odds. It was in my internship year. I was 21. I had been given a crew as a project, my first crew, and it was at a national event. It's called Women's Henley, and the sculler was not the biggest sculler. She was working with us, but she wasn't actually talent ID'd. And she wasn't expected to win the final. She was against this Canadian monster of a woman. She was a brilliant sculler, international before, and we both decided to go against the guidance of a more experienced coach. We came together as a team and thought the only way we can go against the odds here is if we try and jump her off the start. And everyone decided that was not possible, but we had our little plan. And seeing her pull that off and seeing her almost not believe what she had done at the finish of the race, that was a moment. And that was very emotional. And even thinking about it now is hilarious to think about it. But that was a big turning point. Probably another was actually through COVID. That was obviously challenging for many elite athletes to be sat at home trying to train on their own. Rowing training is tough. And add on to that, obviously, everything that was going on through COVID, that was a real challenge. But seeing how myself, but also all the athletes, stayed connected together. We used to do briefing calls, which I'm sure they didn't like at the time, at 7:30 in the morning to give them a rhythm. We used to do group sessions, as I'm sure many people in sport tried to find novel ways to connect athletes together. But what was interesting is coming out of COVID, having done all of that, and we did silly competitions and celebrations of people's birthdays, coming out of that time and seeing how we as a squad stepped on, where some people had used that experience as perhaps an excuse. Obviously, everyone was challenged in that environment, but seeing them come out of that time stronger and more united, that's when our identity as a Twickenham group, as the Islanders, really came out. that's when I knew, okay, right, I've done something here. I've been part of something that's brilliant. It's not even possible to describe, but seeing the results were fantastic. And then probably most recently, and it came as a surprise once again, was seeing someone win kind of from afar. So it was an athlete that I coached as a junior. He was brilliant at the time, but young. So he needed to go through his learning. He went off to university. He's learnt a lot since then and been coached by multiple people. And I've seen him recently step into the national team. Having had, a few challenges along the way, and we've kept in touch, but I've not been his coach in a long while. And I happened to be at the European Championships coaching the women's double, so the senior European Championships, and he won in the 8. And watching him over the finish line and recognising that was his first proper international, and obviously he had won, made me very emotional, but made me recognise that as a coach, you can be proud of someone and see their journey, and you have the privilege of having been a little part of it. So yeah, that's probably another moment.
Yeah, it sounds like you're really amazing at bringing everyone together as a team. Even during COVID, the fact that they came out all really bonded and very cohesive. What has a sport like rowing, which in some ways you could look at it as a very individual sport, depending on how many are in a boat, but in other ways, there's probably not another sport where you have to be as in sync with your teammates. Yeah. What has it taught you about communication and leadership, both in and outside of the boat?
Yeah, and leadership's a responsibility. That's a starting point. You have responsibility for athletes' welfare, and I take that very seriously. That's a starting point. So from a coach's perspective, if I've got young athletes, I try to make sure that I have their safety at the forefront of my mind, but also I think leadership becomes about enabling the athlete rather than leading from the front all the time. You have to direct them, obviously, but ensuring that you enable someone to be the best person they can be. I think back to the leadership skills that I had to do when I taught via one of my athletes how to swim. Right, you're enabling someone to be the best person they can be. It certainly wasn't my skill set. I'm not going to be a swim coach anytime soon, but that's something that I've learned and evolved to do. From a communication perspective, thinking about how people have to operate within a boat and all be in sync, as you say. I probably have honed those skills and learnt the most through international projects. So most recently, I coached at the Under-23 World Championships, the women's 4 who won gold, which was amazing. But the start of our project was only 3.5 weeks earlier. And
wow,
they were all at different unis. So they hadn't really rowed with each other before. 3 of them were out in the US at university there. 1 of them was at university in London. And we had to get together as a gang, and I had to give them the structure of how we were going to try and row and put together and piece together the plan of how we're going to operate. But then on top of that, you had to enable them to communicate with each other, because I wasn't going to be in the boat. They didn't want me there. I would have slowed it down. But trying to find a common language. And I've learned tricks along the way. I mean, one of the silly things we did with our race plan, for example, is I likened it to a Nando's heat chart. Right, so as we wanted things to push on, or if we wanted to increase the pressure, I talked about it getting a little bit spicier. And it made things click, and it made it comical, but it also created that common language amongst us. And I love those challenges. The coach that I mentioned earlier, Shep, gave me that challenge and said, "Look, this is your jam. You love getting people together and finding that communication." So that was brilliant that he trusted me to do it with that boat. And I thoroughly enjoyed the project, as short as it was.
How do you handle situations where you may have personalities in a boat that all need very different communication styles, but you need them to work together?
I think it's about bringing out the gold dust in someone. So I can recognise, or I try to recognise in a boat, where's someone that's got a cool head? Where's someone that is going to really crack the whip when things get spicy and we need to move on? Where's someone that's always going to make sure that everyone's organised, got their water bottles, and is going to be on time, a bit of the mother of the boat, or it happens in men's boats as well. And you have to try and recognise that, and that comes out in seeing how people operate in social situations. And then from there, you have to try and kind of nudge someone. So you might have a private conversation to say, right, okay, I can see you're going to be really organised. Right, let's make sure everyone's going to be here on time. Or sometimes it's about having a nudge to say, I think this person needs an arm around them, and it's going to land better if it's from someone in the boat rather than from me. So that's probably how I try to work it. And it doesn't always land properly, but for me, it's all about trying to find the gold dust in someone.
Yeah. And then talking about athletes individually, how do you adapt your coaching style as they progress through the different stages of the sport?
Yeah, it's hard. I think I've learned over the years, in terms of evolving the coaching style, you start off as a teacher, because ultimately when they learn, you have all the cards to teach them the basics. And then from there, you often become a bit of a guide. So you cue them, you teach them a little bit more, but often you're creating that two-way feedback. And then as they progress into more international stages, although you're still responsible for the program, you still need to give guidance and so on, you often are stood next to them exploring. And that's the best way to describe it in my eyes. And I've done that with multiple athletes, and it's hard to adapt to it, because when I first started going through that process with some of the athletes stepping into international, you want all the answers. And actually it takes a moment to realise, okay, we need to explore this together. I'm going to seek out information. It's my responsibility to do that. But they may also come with ideas, and accepting that their ideas might be brilliant. And that's part of evolving together as a team. And that was brilliant also when we had a squad where some people I had recently talent ID'd and I was teaching, and others were obviously at that stage where I was exploring with them. I actually saw them become the teachers as well. And that was fantastic, because I could ask someone to just go talk to that newbie, because it might land better with them. And it's all about adapting that style. The other thing is people learn differently, and that's something that I've always recognised, probably because I learn differently myself. I learn by doing or seeing. I don't like the written word.
I'm the same.
I'm academic, but I was heavily dyslexic, so it's not something that I lean on. So I try to see how someone wants to learn and explore different ways, to the point where when I'm briefing, you might see me walking up and down the hard where we boat, where we land, to demonstrate where in the river we're going to be to do pieces. Because I recognise some of my athletes might have ADHD, and therefore my words they're not going to listen to.
Yeah.
So I have to do something, and if it means I have to look stupid doing it to make it land, I'm okay with that. Some athletes I've been known to make noises to describe how the blade needs to be entered into the water, and I'm okay that if that's what we need to do to make it land, then so be it. Another technique that I've learned is using video. Video is obviously fantastic. Phones nowadays are obviously high tech, etc. If I want to get someone to understand what they're doing and make a change, there was one particular athlete who I would film rowing, and then I'd pull them in on my launch, show them the video, and risk my phone going in the water. And I hope it didn't. And then they could see it and go, right, okay, we'll try something new, film it again, okay, pull in and do that. So just got to keep exploring and work out different ways to say the exact same point.
Yeah, love it. We've spoken a bit about Callum Dixon already, and how he started out under your guidance and then he went on to target Paris Olympics.
Yeah.
What was it like seeing that journey unfold for him?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a privilege to see all of the athletes that I've seen go through the programs I've been part of. That's the starting point. You know, multiple internationals, but also people that have obviously stepped through the sport and moved on. For him, he had been an elite athlete before. It took him 4 seasons to go from start through to the Olympics, and he narrowly missed out with his crewmates on a medal. But it was fantastic to see him perform at that level. I'd say he came to the sport quite naturally. He was a sailor. So water he was familiar with, which meant that he also came with a less risk-averse nature to learning, which was fantastic. But just because it came natural didn't mean that he didn't have challenges. You know, his first year of rowing was COVID, so he had to learn to progress through that period, and he did after he came off the back of COVID and ended up going to the A final of our internal trial that we did, which was unheard of. So that was fantastic. But also seeing him through some of the setbacks that he had. There was a particular one, once again, COVID related, in 21, where I was coaching the under-23 men's quad, and we had an issue where they became a contact. 2 of the guys became a contact, 2 of them didn't. I ended up having to have 2 guys that went in a double, so a 2-man boat off to the World Championships, and he had to stay behind. And that was gutting at the time, but to see him fight through it and actually be even more determined to succeed. We ended up going to the Euros with the 2 guys, so I did a double at the World Championships with the others, and then the double that had to stay behind ended up doing a domestic project and then going to the European Championships. And we went as far as to having to live together for 3 weeks, which was challenging to say the least, because two 20-year-old guys that want to do a lot of Game Boy or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And we ended up living with a cat, and I'm allergic to cats.
Oh my God.
So the sacrifices we did, but we took it seriously, and seeing him and his partner Nathan really step on together in that project. They went on 1 gold, and they stormed the rest of the field, and they even beat the boat that had been world champions only a few months earlier. So they obviously had elevated their game through that, and seeing him step through that adversity and actually step on was amazing, and I was obviously part of it, which was fantastic as well. And then obviously now I'm really in his corner, you know. Okay, he shows me some video and I'll give him my opinion, but ultimately I'm actually learning with him, and he comes back and talks me through what he's learning as being part of the international setup now. And only on the weekend he won silver at the World Championships.
Wow.
So he's going again for LA, which is fantastic, and I really look forward to following his journey more, and probably now being one of his biggest fans rather than a coach, but it's always great to see him succeed.
I mean, it sounds like you were really there through those moments of adversity and setbacks, but how do you help your athletes through those moments when perhaps then feelings of self-doubt creep in? How do you help them push through that and come out the other side?
It's tough. I don't think there's any answers to it. I think I try and listen to the athletes and understand where they're coming from, but also try and reframe it. So for me, any setback is an opportunity to step on. So an often example is that someone gets injured. So if someone gets injured, then we have to think about the building blocks that cause the injury. We lean on medical staff, we create a plan, and I think when an athlete can understand that there's a route out of whatever the setback is, then that gives them the tools to be able to cope with the scenario they're in. So for me, it's about ensuring that we have that plan set forward and that they can see themselves getting even better off the back of that setback. And that goes the same for deselection or a failed goal. It's about understanding that you're bigger than that goal, and you're bigger than the injury, you're more of a person than that, but at the same time we can use this as an opportunity to grow.
I love that, and I think that's often the hardest thing for athletes when it's their career and they have a setback. I can imagine the spiral can be so intense, but then the amount of people you see come off the back of an injury and perform better than they did beforehand is amazing. Under your leadership, the under-23 women's doubles went from bronze in 2022 to silver in 2023. What changed in that year?
A lot changed in that year. for a starting point, both athletes, so Catherine George was at university in the US. So she went back to uni and started doing the other discipline in the sport, so a one-bladed boat, so sweeping rather than sculling. There was 2 blades. And Vira remained in Twickenham with myself, and she ended up getting an injury that year. So it was almost 2 different routes. So Catherine, we were concerned about her going from one discipline to the other. So we spent a lot of the year with the support staff trying to create a plan to ensure that she was robust enough to make that change. And that was something that she really targeted herself as well. And Vire, through that injury, we had to work with the support staff to find a way of getting out of that even stronger, and creating more range of movement, which she didn't have before. So there was that step on. But the biggest change was probably when we got them back together as a group, and seeing how they lent on the support staff, and they were firing up to create the plan to make sure that they had left no stone unturned was amazing. We knew that the World Championships was in Bulgaria. That's hot there. So hot that at the start line of their final there was fire. There was a little fire that was happening on the side of the towpath.
Oh my god!
At one point they shut the top of the towpath for coaches because it was so hot.
That hot! Wow.
Yeah. So because of that, we actually used our physiologist, and we went and used the UKSI, the UK Sport Institute heat chamber. And he was brilliant, and he gave us a protocol to try and get them used to the heat. So it's called heat acclimation. And the girls took it really seriously. We had all of the hydration strategies, and we worked on how we could keep them cool as possible, to the point where the physiologist got them reusable ice pop makers, which was hilarious. But on top of that, it was about creating a plan. And the biggest thing that was different, and they led me through, was that they knew they had to be bolder than ever before. We knew the Romanians that won gold in 22 were going to come back again, and they were going to be only even better because they had exposure into the senior team. So they decided they had to be bold with their plan and go early, much earlier than they'd ever done. And the description we used was, I always talk about picking a fire. So you've got to put your hand in the fire to basically get yourself right at that edge and working hard. You can choose to pick the biggest fire and do it for a short period of time and really sprint. Or what we chose, which was to pick the fire and put the hand in for as long as possible. So we knew we had to go early and chug away. And the girls did a fantastic job, and we knew when they crossed their line, that line, that they couldn't have done anything more. And they held the Romanians for a long period of time, and it was close. But seeing them be able to step away from the rest of the field demonstrated that, okay, the Romanians were better on the day. And they had obviously stepped on, but clearly the girls had stepped on as well. And they had taken both the technical, but also the mental side, the strategy side, even more seriously. And being brave was a big part of that.
I mean, to me, that's 2 really clear examples of when you had the individual athlete going up against a Canadian and then the double going up against the Romanians, going up against 2 world dominating teams at the time. And in both situations, you've encouraged them to go out hot. And from my personal experience, I've always been the person who's always left a little bit in the tank so I can sprint finish. Yeah. How do you give the athletes the courage that you can do this and you can hold it? It will be hell, but you can do it. And how do you give them that trust in you that that's what they need to do to achieve the goal they're going for?
From a race plan perspective, I will say that for the most part, we make sure the middle of the race is the key focus. But in terms of being bold, I'd say it comes from practice. So I had this funky session that I created where I would just, I'd say go, and the athletes would have to go as hard as possible, and they wouldn't know when I was going to tell them to stop. And that was probably my most enjoyable session that I ever...
I bet it was for you, yeah.
I loved it, and I think the athletes saw that. But I think they really bought in. So that was something that we used to do at Twickenham. And often I was coaching people that had been part of my squad. So I actually continued to use that most recently when I was running the Performance Sculling Academy, which was a transition centre for people in our discipline trying to get into the senior team for LA. It was part of this Project LA that we were running. And that session is probably the one that I use to prime it. And it teaches them how to be bold and brave, and you don't know whether it's going to last 10 seconds or 3 minutes. So that's one thing, practice. The other thing you said is trust. I don't think it can happen in a moment. A little bit like building respect. It comes through not necessarily the sessions that we run, but the going for coffees and the going for walks and having talks about life, and them understanding that I care about them more as a human being as well as an athlete. And probably even better for me is card games. So I like to play card games in the break, and they do as well. And them seeing that I have a competitive nature as well, that always fires them up. But it builds trust over time. And I think that's vital, because that enables them to trust me when I want to suggest a new plan. But it also keeps us in tune. We have that level of communication and understanding of someone.
To me, everything that you're saying here is bold. You're helping them break through the fear of how something might go. Will they blow up before they get to the end? Is it going to hurt too much that they can't stick to the game plan? And you just do such an incredible job of bringing them in and going, I've got you. I want the best for you. Yeah, it's going to be hard. It's supposed to be hard. Otherwise, you wouldn't be at the level you're at. Everyone would be here with you. Yeah. It's really cool.
Yeah, there's a phrase that one of the athletes, Callum, used to use, which, we say to each other, which is, it's the best job in the world. And it's true, it is the best job in the world. It's the best job in the world for me to get to support them. But as an athlete, the privilege that they have to be able to perform on the world stage and be brave and have a fight in them, it's fantastic that they can do that as part of their job. They earn a living doing it, not much, but the fact that they get to pursue that, I think that's something that's important to remember. As soon as it becomes just about the pressure to perform, I think you lose the love of it. And it's so important to remember that we should be enjoying what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, my next question was going to be, what's the most common thing you remind athletes, no matter the level? I can imagine that's one of them.
Yeah, it is one of them. But probably the biggest thing is that you have to be a healthy and high-performing human before you can be a healthy, high-performing athlete. I say human, not person, because I always think person has to have a purpose. When you have a job, you have a hobby, etc., and you have a family around you. But as a human, you need to make sure that you're watered, you've slept, you're not too stressed, etc. I think it's so important that they do that first, because okay, you can probably perform through a few scenarios and months where you're not quite at your best as a person or as a human, but it catches up with you. And I've seen it only too many times. So reminding them that they have to prioritise that first. They're bigger than the rowing. They're bigger than the sport. They're bigger than any goal they have. And that's success or loss. They're bigger than that. They need to make sure that they are okay and well as a human before they can ask their bodies to do something as bold as what a rowing race does.
I could honestly talk to you all day. I'm sat here like, oh my God, this is amazing.
Yeah.
So you're a graduate of the WISH program,
yes,
which stands for, hold on to your hats because it's such a mouthful, Women in Sport High Performance Coaching.
Yeah.
What did that experience mean to you?
Well, it is a mouthful. It meant a lot of the time. So the International Olympic Committee is the body that has sponsored this, and being nominated by British Rowing, selected by World Rowing, and then obviously stepping into the programme alongside other coaches that had been accepted by the IOC was incredible. A privilege in itself, and meeting other international coaches that happened to be female at the time, but a lot of the conversations were just about being a coach. I did recognise that perhaps we're quite privileged in the UK, hearing a lot of people's stories about how they've had to push through selection and perhaps some barriers that I wasn't seeing, particularly in UK rowing, was interesting and obviously fascinating to hear. And actually, over and above that, I created a lot of connections. So now on the towpath at World Championships, I'll say hello to a few of the people that were on those programs, which is awesome to see. I coached against one of the other coaches, or actually I've multiple times. My Swiss counterpart always seems to coach the opposition, and my US counterpart actually was coaching this summer the women's four. So that was interesting. And then lastly probably was an ongoing connection where one of the coaches, actually, we got chatting and I found an opportunity for her, and she applied for a role in the UK, and she now works for British Rowing. So
I love that.
Yeah, so having that ongoing friendship as well is fantastic.
High level coaching still has relatively few women.
Mm-hmm.
What barriers do you think still exist, and how can we start to break them down?
Yeah, obviously I can only speak for rowing in the UK. I can't necessarily, I don't have an exposure on the other side of sports. I would say that I'm recently been part of a network that we're trying to create through the national governing body to try and pinpoint those coaches that are in the pathway to be elite coaches. And there's a lot of them. There's a lot of female coaches that are out there. The biggest thing I noticed is they need to have the right network. And I notice now, having applied for the role that I did in the bold way that I did, I created a network of coaches, and people knew who I was because also I was running my own program. And a lot of these coaches perhaps don't have the privilege of the network I do. I have a key female coach that is a friend as well as a confidant, etc. And she's at the top of her game. She's the head of the Paralympic rowing team in Britain. But then I also had a series of male colleagues that would push me to do an opportunity and to say yes to things. Some of these people don't have those networks. And I try my best through coach mentoring, informally and formally, to try and be part of that network. I've been a mentor of both male and female coaches, but more recently, more formally of particularly through my director of rowing role, and multiple series of coaches. A few of them happen to be female, and often it's about seeing another coach like them in practice, and having that trust to be open and vulnerable to talk through some of the challenges in coaching is something I've noticed. But then on top of that, more formally also with an ex-athlete of mine who's starting out her international coaching career, and her seeing that, okay, I am doing the right thing, it's okay, I just need a bit of reassurance, or I'm stuck here, can you help me? And knowing that network is there for you. That would be the barrier I'm seeing in rowing particularly.
Yeah. Have you ever felt underestimated or overlooked as a female coach? And if you have, how did you navigate that?
It's always hard to pinpoint. I've been a young coach and a female coach at the same time.
Yeah.
And you also don't want to always lean on that as the reason why someone doesn't instantly trust what you're saying or respect you. So as a starting point, I've never tried to dwell on whether it is because I'm female or because I'm young, less young now. I've actually tried to just use it as fire to try and be better as a coach. I've always tried to make sure I work harder and try and just understand and justify what I'm trying to do. And if that is fueled by the fact that I'm not sure if someone's trusting me, then so be it. I have probably one example when I was first applying for full-time roles as a coach, and I wanted to get people's opinions on whether I should go for it. I was young. I was going to be the youngest in the setup, the talent ID setup space. And I just happened to ask one individual that I thought would give me a different answer, but he decided to say that he thought it might not be the best idea because in his experience, female coaches need to be overqualified to be trusted by athletes. Wow. In comparison to their male counterparts. And it was meant in a supportive manner. It was meant to protect. But actually, how it landed was that I shouldn't go for that opportunity. I happened to also ask 8 or 9 other people who all said, go for it, you'd be silly not to. So I listened to the 8 or 9 people, but it did stick with me. It stuck with me, especially when I then started to recruit male athletes. And particularly because that was the thing he was saying was, male athletes won't listen to you. I haven't found that. I've had a series of male athletes, or many. I've probably actually coached more male than I have female, and I've not come across that for me, they've treated me as a coach, and okay, there's some things that perhaps female athletes might feel that they could identify with me in a personal sense, but actually I treat all my athletes as human, as I would expect them to do the same. I probably more self-identify as a coach. I want to be the best coach I can be. I happen to be a female coach, and if that inspires someone, great. But I want to be the best coach I can be.
Yeah, it's really interesting because similarly to you, I got into coaching and training people at quite a young age.
Okay. Yeah.
And I had a real age complex for a long time.
Yeah.
More so than the female side of things.
Yes.
I didn't really feel the gender side of things until I was probably mid-20s.
Okay. Yeah.
But maybe I wasn't aware of it at the time, because I feel like if you grow up in a sporting world, you don't really feel that male-female divide. I think if you step into it later in life, sometimes you may feel it a bit more. But for those people listening who may be on the younger side of things, stepping into their career, what advice would you have for trying to park that complex, put it to the side, and just have that confidence in yourself that you really do know what you're doing, and you often know more than you think?
It's a tough question. I think if I look back to what I would love someone to have said to me, it probably would have been know your strengths. Because everyone will come with, it's that gold dust again. Everyone will come with something that they're good at naturally. Know them and use them with conviction. But then also look at your gaps in knowledge. Look at your gaps in knowledge and find opportunities to either be exposed, to have to raise to your game, and just know that it might not go completely to plan, and that's okay. And alternatively, find someone who will guide you, and you can be open with. That would be my biggest set of advice, so that then they know that there's something that they are good at, and they've got that gold dust that they can push forward. But you also have to be aware that you will learn stuff over time if you are young. That's the natural part of it, right? You want to be able to grow and learn, and I'm always looking to learn as a coach. If you stop learning, I think you stop growing and you stop being able to perform.
Yeah. And when it was a guy who said the overlooked thing, they have to be overqualified, as a female coach. Yeah. Why do you think that narrative is there, even though you haven't experienced it yourself? Yeah. Why do you think that might be the case in some people's minds? I'm unsure. It could be a societal thing, but I think it was probably a worry that might be the perception. I haven't experienced it, like I say, and obviously it was a male individual that said it, so maybe he was concerned because he hadn't seen a female coach in that setting before, perhaps. Yeah. So it's hard to tell, because if I'd seen it in practice, then I might be able to say, okay, because it is present in this point in society. Maybe there's this idea of that macho element of a male athlete, but I think if you treat all athletes as equals and as individuals, more to the point, I don't think actually we then need to worry about that gender difference. No, agreed. And I think even if it had been a woman who had said that, it doesn't matter who it was saying it, but the idea that it's not just in sport, I do think in the corporate world as well, women tend to go for jobs that they are overqualified for. And I remember someone telling me this stat, and a lot of men will often have more confidence to apply for jobs that maybe they're not quite at yet, but they're like, I can learn, I can do that. Whereas females sometimes feel like they have to be overqualified to apply for something. I find that really interesting, and I'd love to know where that comes from, because I felt that. I don't think I've ever applied for, or maybe I have, but I feel a lot better applying for something I know I could do with my eyes closed than something that would be a challenge. But then I think maybe what sport has taught me is that it does get you to go for things that perhaps feel outside of your comfort zone, and that's such a beautiful part of sport in itself.
I think that's it. I've been part of, obviously, sporting setups for a while, and having got to know a lot of people, okay, particularly athletes, and seeing the difference in personalities that all of them have, I've probably not noticed a theme, and I probably use that a lot and say, well, actually, no, they're all individuals, and I've had some of my boldest, most fiery individuals be females, and some of my more reluctant and tentative individuals be male. So I guess in my environment, I haven't necessarily seen that shift, but I know it's present, and I know talking to other female coaches in the network that we're trying to create at the moment, that people do feel that. But I haven't also then been part of a network of male coaches and see whether they would be open and honest about them feeling that same presence.
Really true. It's very interesting. So some of your athletes you've coached have described you as someone who says it as it is.
Yeah.
How do you balance being honest with showing care while adapting to each athlete?
I think we owe it to the athletes to be honest. They are risking so much to be an elite athlete, particularly, but even in the community space, you're trying to be your best. So why would we not be honest? But then also, I can't get away from the fact that I do care. So it comes naturally to me. How do I balance it? Probably the biggest thing is if there's a difficult conversation. No one ever enjoys that, and especially if you know that it's going to evoke an emotion. I think long and hard before that conversation, and I try to understand how that athlete might be feeling. I try to land my message as carefully but also as honestly as possible, because if you're not honest in that moment, then you're going to have that conversation again, and it's going to hurt more because you haven't said it in that initial phase. So that's probably the biggest thing, and then probably from there, just ensuring that they understand the intent of what's coming across. So if they understand that I'm meaning this in a caring manner, I'm meaning this for the best of them. Probably the hardest conversations I've ever had as a coach when I was on a talent ID program is some athletes aren't going to step into the elite space. And having to have that conversation and reframe what has been their life for a number of years, but them understanding that I'm doing this for the best for them, because a lot of the athletes I'm coaching are delaying careers, could be earning big bucks in comparison to what they're doing at the moment. But also, this might not be the right setup for them. It doesn't mean they can't be successful. And I've always said that to someone, prove me wrong. I'd love you to prove me wrong. But also, we owe it to you now to make sure that you move on from this, because this is not doing you justice. Yeah. So it's always tough. Always tough.
I can imagine one thing you have to be really honest with them about is when it's time to push them harder and when it's time to pull them back. How do you decide which one is needed and when?
The pushing harder, I've always run a really tough program. So everyone knows that there's going to be some physical holes we're going to go through. In rowing, it's the nature. You have to have miles and intensity in your toolbox as such. In those stages, the biggest thing is about ensuring that we check in. So I was always very clear with athletes, or still am, that when they arrive in the morning, I'm going to make sure I get a gauge on whether they're okay or not. And it is about reading the body language as well as the words that are coming out of their mouth. But as soon as we're clear that they're okay, then okay, right, we're gonna drive on, and I'll say to them, right, well, if I want you to push on for a split, I'll encourage you to do so. And I'm always pushing with them, not at them. That's the big thing. But on top of that, the biggest time that's hard to judge in terms of pulling someone back is probably through injury. Many points through illness, although some illnesses do last longer than you'd ever want them to. I lean on the medical staff. They've got the specialty. I always say, I'm not a physio, I'm not a doctor, and I know my limitations. And I sit around with the athlete in the room, and we have a multidisciplinary meeting. So we're sat there and we are leaning on the physio, and we work out a plan together, because it's important the athlete buys into it and knows that this is for their best interest. And at this point, we can actually start to create that plan that will enable them to be better in the future. But it's often using the medical staff or using their own best judgment and reflecting it back to them as well.
Do you think coaches can sometimes underestimate how powerful their words can be in shaping an athlete's belief in themselves?
Absolutely. We have a massive responsibility as coaches, and I've always thought this, probably taken coaching way too seriously from a young age because of that. But I can remember the words that some of my coaches said to me. I remember one phrase on the way back from a trial that a coach said to me that, because of my personality is very intense. I was very competitive, which meant that when people got on a boat with me, they wanted to be in a boat with me. But when I got on the land, I found it hard to switch off. And that stuck with me, because then that meant that when I went into social settings, I knew that that was a part of my personality. So I knew if that coach had said that to me and it stuck, that then ultimately when I say something to an athlete, I know it might stick as well. And if I ever misspeak, I try to, as much as possible, sit down with the athlete and actually say, I'm human, I've messed up, I'm sorry, and explain that, okay, these words, that's not how I meant it to land at all. We're going through, a big relationship, a coach-athlete relationship, especially when people are training 6 days a week, 3 sessions a day. There's going to be times where they're tired, I'm tired, I don't want to admit it, but okay, I'm not physically tired, but there's longer hours, so we may misspeak. And how do we come together and reconcile that?
I just think that's incredible. Having a coach say to you, I've messed up, like you said, it humanizes the coach rather than putting them on a pedestal and feeling like it's a one-way dynamic and there's that power coming from above. It just makes, I can imagine it makes the athlete feel like they're on a level and they can have much more of an intimate relationship with you. You've recently taken on the role of Director of Rowing at Twickenham.
Yes.
What is your vision for the programme?
A lot.
Or visions, we can make it plural.
As a starting point, so Twickenham is a fantastic community club. So I was based there previously under a role that I worked for the NGB, and I loved the community. So it's a club where you have the youngest rowers will be 12 and the oldest might be up to their 90s. And coming into the role as Director of Rowing, once again, it's a privilege but a responsibility. And in terms of my rowing vision, I want us to be known as the value-added club. So the club where every member gets the opportunity to reach their potential. We have the skill set as coaches, and I want to keep evolving our knowledge as a team to make sure that if you want to be an international rower, we have the capabilities of doing that. But more importantly, our senior squads that want to row domestically have the opportunity to reach their potential, to get the technical knowledge, to get the physical knowledge, to get the most bang for their buck. Because that's probably one of my biggest bugbears is there's a lot of community sport that happens, and are we making sure we get the most out of the time that you're there rowing and working hard after a long day at work. But also, if you want to turn up to the club and row for fun, you still have the right to be the best rower you can be. So ensuring that we get the right coaches for that, but also we gain the right knowledge as a whole club. So that's my starting point for the rowing side. From a social aspect, I want everyone to understand that, and they do. It's brilliant that it's a multi-generational community. That on a Wednesday night when it's club night, after you've rowed, you might sit next to someone who's 50 years older than you, but they may also be in the career that you want to get into. So can you lean on people, or people might be going through the same life challenges, and using the club as the vehicle to lean on each other and to talk. The community aspect on that island, which it's based on, that community of the club is fantastic. It's electric is the only way I can describe it on a club night, or we do these club time trials now where everyone is racing against each other, and seeing people be competitive with with other squads that perhaps in the past they might have rode alongside but not known, and seeing them kind of give each other a bit of fighting talk is fantastic. And then lastly is a big responsibility, again I use this word a lot, is on the access to all perspective. So the club has a CASC status. It's a community sport club. That's what it stands for. And from that perspective, I want to make sure anyone in the local area that wants to row and has the opportunity to row, or more to the point, would have the opportunity through the club. So we're doing things like making sure that we give free taster sessions to local schools to give people that idea of what rowing is like, that they might not have ever wanted to go on a boat in the river. But we did that last summer. Shay, who's a fantastic coach at the club, got through 45, 50 kids that were around the age of 12 to 13 and gave them a taste of what the sport's about. And some of them have now stepped into the club. Cool. But the same would go for an adult that's wanting to learn to row. And the club has done some fantastic initiatives in the past about supporting breast cancer recoveries or survival patients, and they went and stepped and used rowing as a vehicle to have a purpose and be able to have something else away from what they're going through at the time. And I want to make sure I can support that and continue to have that legacy that the club has already got.
The power of sport is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
That communal aspect of it as well is just so incredibly powerful. Yeah. Looking back at your journey so far, what advice would you have for not only women but men too who are thinking about stepping into a leadership role in sport?
Well, I mean, probably I would say work-life balance, but I'd be probably stupid to say that if I'm honest, only because I don't think that I would have been able to support the athletes to the level that I supported them at if I had tried to work on my work-life balance. So for the past 10 years, I haven't had that, but actually now I recognise that was a natural part of ensuring that I supported my athletes to the right level in high performance. So trying to be a 9 to 5 or switching off is not a thing. I would talk about weaving your career into your life and seeing it as a part of your life rather than having to feel like you need to switch off. But then that probably leads me into ensuring that you do know that you're more than just the goals and the successes and the failures. I wish I'd learned to enjoy the process earlier. There's especially in rowing, very few days where you get to actually deliver the goal. And understanding that you need to enjoy that process to lead up to it. And that's more important, and that's 99% of the enjoyment, would have probably made some of those goals that we didn't quite hit easier to swallow, because the journey was fantastic. And I look back now and wish I could shake myself and say, it was great. Yeah, you didn't quite hit that, but that's okay. You've learned and they've learned. So yeah, enjoying the process is probably the better bit of advice.
What's one thing you wish the world of rowing could do slightly better to support women more?
From a female athlete perspective, I would say it's in general, it's women's health. I know, and I've got exposure having recently worked temporarily in the women's national team, that the support staff, the medical staff and the coaches, but particularly that the medical team are doing their best to be probably world leading at understanding women's health, and then obviously how that builds into performance. There's particularly a physiotherapist who's inordinately passionate, and I came with a problem. It was a particular problem about athletes sitting on cycling seats, and she actually leaned on other sports that are trying to understand. So she went into cycling and spoke to them and understood the research behind it, and actually sourced the particular seat that we needed to help. And they're doing a brilliant job. There's a lot around relative energy deficiency syndrome, REDS, that they're still learning, and they're being part of the research, which is fantastic. But if we're at that point in elite rowing, an elite sport, then the thing that I think is gutting is I'm then also working in the community space and seeing a lot of people there that are coming across the same challenges. But if we're only learning at the pointy end of the sport at the moment, it does mean that in the wider community that there are women that they don't have the access to the knowledge or the support, and seeing them not be able to fulfill their potential is gutting at the moment. And I'm trying to do my best to help educate, but it's something that obviously I'm not a specialist. So I try to understand what's going on in the elite space and see if we can disseminate that information. And there are brilliant schemes and companies that are trying to do the same. And UK Sport Institute, UKSI, are doing their best to also push out information, particularly on the elite side of things. But we also don't know. There's a lot of years, tens of years, where a lot of research was not being done into female athletes. So we're playing catch up. Yeah.
There's definitely progress, but like you said, we're just quite far behind in comparison. But it's amazing to see more support and more resources going into the research, and then as a result being able to implement more, I don't even know what the right word is, but being able to bring in more things like having the correct seat for women with cycling, and having more education and knowledge around women's health itself.
Yeah. And from the elite space, they're doing hormonal screening, bloods, etc. And that's fantastic that they've got to that point. But obviously, we're a long way off being able to understand that from a community perspective.
Yeah. If you had one piece of advice for your younger self, what would it be?
Probably to recognise that I'm more than just the coaching. That's probably one thing. To know that it's the process thing, isn't it? It's the understanding that whether you fail or not, you're bigger than that. That would be my one piece of advice, but perhaps also just go for it. Take the opportunities, and to be fair to myself, I have taken a lot of opportunities, and I do think that I was bold with it, and I think probably just do it without hesitating. I now take more opportunities when I'm offered them. Most recently, whether that's at World Championships or to support development athletes at under 23s, or going off and going to a trip to Shanghai that I did a couple of years ago, saying yes to the opportunity and not hesitating, but still being as attentive to understanding how you can do it justice as well.
I love that. Thank you so much. You've been amazing.
No worries. Thank you. I really enjoyed chatting.